Am I the a-hole for telling my mother who survived cancer that she's a failure as a parent when she tried to take credit for my accomplishments? My mother has always had issues, and as a parent she was pretty detached mentally. My parents didn't get married, and I steadily ended up living with my dad full-time. And because she wasn't in my life very much, I hardly ever even referred to my mother as mom. A few years ago, she was diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer and had to have mastectomy. She recovered well, but ever since she was given the bill of clean health, she has started trying to act like a parent who did everything for me my entire life. And she goes out of her way to talk about such things in public, and people were eating it up. Last week, I met up with my mother and several of her friends for lunch because I'd recently landed a small promotion at my job, and my mother was insistent on celebrating. Well, during said lunch, she of course talked about how proud of me she was, and boasting about her boy to her friends, and how she did so much to make sure I was brought up right. I was internally angry because she was lying through her teeth, but I didn't plan on saying anything. But then she started crap-talking my dad, and the things she was saying were outright lies that painted my dad as the absent and neglectful parent. She took credit for several of the major milestones in my life that she didn't even show up for. I ended up getting angry and pointed out she wasn't there for any of those things. She froze and then laughed it off, then tried to say that I was always a jokester. I ended up saying something like, "How would you know whether or not I'm a jokester? You were barely around when I was a kid. You didn't even buy clothes for me to wear. My dad was the one who was really there for me, and I won't let you insult his good name like this to make yourself look good." She ended up crying with her face in her hands, and her friends ganged up on me. They started demanding I apologize, but I refused and said that just because she survived cancer, it doesn't let her rewrite her own history. She was almost never there for me as a kid. She didn't even attend my high school graduation, let alone even remember what year I graduated. She tried to say of course she remembered, but guessed wrong, it was off by 2 years. I called her a liar and a failure as a parent, and said not to contact me again until she's willing to admit the truth, and apologize to me and my dad. I then left cash for my part of the bill with the waiter and walked out. My mother's friends were all yelling at me, and I could hear her crying all the way from the street. My maternal grandmother messaged me on Facebook to chew me out, but I said that I wasn't gonna let my mother rewrite history, and she knows full well what really went on. My grandmother said I could have waited to call her out in private, because now many of my mother's friends are questioning her. I said I really didn't care anymore, and stopped messaging. But now that I've had time to cool off, I'm wondering if I took things too far. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. I'm so sorry you've been put in this situation, but you're correct. You don't have to uphold your mother's lies, and you're allowed to tell her how you feel. I think it may be time to limit contact with her though for your own sanity. Exactly. Not the a-hole OP. She has created her own version of history that paints her as the hero and your father as the villain, and she is spreading this lie to make herself feel better. I understand her need to reconnect with you after her brush with cancer. You made a decision to let her back into your life when not many people would have done that after the neglect they faced from that parent. But that doesn't give her carte blanche to distort the truth. She maligned your father in company, so you were well within your rights to call her out on her lies. Don't feel bad about it. In a situation like this, only you can truly know right. But one thing I get. You can sit there listening to the lies and embellishments until she badmouthed your dad who clearly was there. So I'd say not the a-hole. Sorry bro, sad situation. It is sad all around, but you stood up for your dad, which was right. I'm sure your mom has regrets, but is expressing that in all the wrong ways instead of coming to terms with her own behavior. Not the a-hole at all. It's amazing how after a serious medical issue, parents like to rewrite history. The thing is, you tried to sit and let her do it, because you probably didn't want to make a scene. But she just had to go and trash talk your dad. Sounds like she wanted to, "Oh no, your life has been so hard," points. Make it out like she had a hard time raising you by herself, and then after all that and you have been successful, she got cancer. She owes you a massive apology for being absent for most of your life and for the fact that she wanted to show you off as a trophy of her accomplishments after her cancer made her realize she was an awful mother. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my sister to stop projecting her insecurities on other women? My sister and her husband are going through very public marital issues. To give you the condensed version, basically, my brother-in-law was caught cheating on my sister by my wife during an event she happened to be working at. She's a bartender. My wife immediately told my sister, in private, without telling my brother-in-law that she knew, and my sister proceeded to get very angry with my wife, accusing her of ruining her marriage. This culminated in my sister breaking down and screaming at my wife during a family dinner, calling her a cheap woman who likes to break up marriages, and a person with no hobbies. My sister's very public rant about my wife led to my brother-in-law admitting, in front of my family members, that he cheated. This, of course, led to more drama. This all happened a few months ago, and as far as I can tell, my sister and her husband are not going to split up. After this whole situation, I decided to distance myself from my family for a little bit. I thought that my sister needed time to process everything, and I didn't think it was fair to my wife to subject her to my sister's rage. I sent a long text message essentially telling her that I wanted her to sincerely apologize to my wife. My sister apologized, and I thought that it would be the end of that. Then my dad invited my wife and I to celebrate his birthday at his place. I knew that everyone would be there, including my sister and her husband, so I was a bit hesitant to go, but my wife assured me that everything would be alright. To start, everything was going well. My sister practically avoided us, which I didn't mind, and my brother-in-law was glued to her side the entire time, so we didn't really face any drama. Everyone was cordial towards one another, and no one mentioned my brother-in-law's infidelity. At one point, I think my wife asked my brother-in-law to move over so that she could sit down. She's currently on crutches. And when my brother-in-law got her a chair and helped her sit down, my sister got extremely mad at my wife for being too friendly with her man. Her exact words. My wife was confused and explained that she just wanted a seat. But my sister wasn't having any of it. She started full-on yelling at my wife for doing what she always does and ruining other people's relationships. My sister has a loud voice, so literally everyone stopped and looked at her and my wife. My wife looked pretty embarrassed and just muttered a sorry. I'd even wanted to go stand up, but I butted in and told my sister to stop yelling at my wife and to stop acting extremely insecure in front of other women and go for counseling or something. For whatever reason, my sister ran out the room crying after that, and my wife and I left soon after. My brother-in-law texted an apology on behalf of my sister, but told me that I was a little rude and that I should apologize. My wife thinks that I may have been too harsh. My entire family is split, some saying that I was too mean to her. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Text your brother-in-law back and suggest that if he stops sleeping around, that might also make things better. This brother-in-law has no right to complain. Sure, but brother-in-law isn't really the problem here. Of course, he's an a-hole, but the best case scenario is that this dumpster fire marriage ends, I'm guessing. Some couples have the emotional maturity and honesty to move past an infidelity, but this one clearly doesn't. So, of the two poorly behaved people in this story, brother-in-law and sister, brother-in-law and his infidelity will one day, God willing, not be OP's problem. I'd honestly ignore him. But his sister and her delusions, insecurity, misogyny, whatever you call it, that will be part of his family dynamic regardless, and that's more important to address. After all, she's not gonna call it on her marriage and be able to work towards being less insane until she's ready to put the blame where it belongs. Your sister is absolutely projecting. Keep standing up for your wife since your sister won't let her. Gonna slip a crutches joke in. Absolutely not stay home. Keep the crutches jokes coming. I love leaving some for my wife. Lol. Not stay home. Your sister is killing the messenger and taking out the anger she should be feeling towards her husband on your wife. She's completely in the wrong. Your sister needs some counseling to help her redirect and refocus the resentment and embarrassment she's feeling and to learn how to move past it. So true. I have no doubt if Opie's wife hadn't told about the cheating and it was discovered that she knew, there would still be fireworks because she kept silent. There is no way to win when dealing with crazy. Next story. Am I the a-hole for getting mad over what my daughter chose after she humiliated me and uninvited me from her engagement dinner party? My daughter, 30 female, is a successful engineer. She cut contact with me the minute she turned 18 and only began talking 2 years ago. This has obviously hurt me a lot and made a lot of my family members disappointed in her. Nowadays, whenever I have to talk to her, I have to tiptoe around her and not comment on her dresses or makeup or career or lifestyle. Otherwise, she simply reminds me that she can and will stop talking to me, that the only reason why it started being her father's death. I only commented on those things during her teens because she had a lot of potential and I didn't want it to go waste. It wasn't harsh at all like she claims. Recently, she got engaged to her boyfriend, 31 male of 8 years, and decided to throw a dinner party to her near and dear ones at their own house. She let me invite a couple of my relations. She told me about 5 to 6 people only, but since I've got a lot of people I'd like to share this milestone with, I did go a little overboard in inviting 10 to 13. This clearly was an issue apparently, because the restaurant in their apartment at a poolside allow only 18 to 20 people max at such events, and my relatives were a majority of them, leaving no room for their friends or boyfriend's family. She sat down and made me uninvite everyone instead of giving a simple excuse as to why they couldn't come, and this experience was very humiliating for me. I told her that she was being rude, and she told me that she'd specified how many people from my side were allowed, and that she was very generous that she even let such people to share something joyous with her. After this, she told me not to come to the party and told me to stop ignoring her instructions. I feel disrespected that someone younger made me lose face. It acted as if I didn't know how all these places worked. They would have accommodated worst case. Am I the a-hole? Now for the comments. You're the a-hole. She stopped talking to you for a reason. To be completely honest, you sound narcissistic. The whole post is about how she's disrespecting you, but it's totally obvious that you are disrespecting her. She gave you a set number of people, and you just didn't follow that. Then told her she was rude because you had to tell your friends they couldn't come. If you invited a number of people she told you to, you wouldn't have had to do that. You shot yourself in the foot and are acting like it was your daughter that did it. You have to take a look at yourself and grow up. OP, you sound like an overbearing mama. It doesn't matter how much potential you think your daughter has. This doesn't mean you are allowed to judge her looks. Judging someone else's looks is not okay. And moreover, we have to love our children because how they are and give them support and love. Nothing else. You're the a-hole. I hope you can see past your narcissistic view that everything you do is good and practice self-reflection. And also, don't count on being invited again. OP is a freaking narcissist. Plain and simple. OP, this event was for your daughter to celebrate her marriage. Yet you found a way to make it about yourself and your feelings. Your daughter set a boundary. She was generous to let you invite 5 to 6 people in my opinion. And you overstepped it. She disinvited you. Basically, you messed around and found out. She isn't rude for having boundaries. It's her day. This isn't about you. Your daughter cut contact with you for a reason. Children don't abandon their parents until they've reached their breaking point. You must have been overbearing for her to decide to go no contact completely once she reached adulthood. You're the a-hole, and a massive one at that. The fact that you threw a tantrum about being disrespected by someone younger shows that you aren't remorseful about what you've done. You're just in need of someone to validate your crappy behavior. I agree with absolutely everything you've said, except the term overbearing. I'm 51 and my mom wants me to leave her house early because she doesn't like me driving at night. That's overbearing in my opinion. OP criticizing her daughter's dress, makeup, career, or lifestyle while she was in vulnerable teenage years, and then completely disregarding her daughter's rules for her party is downright narcissistic, and you factually stated. OP is a major a-hole and it's no wonder why her daughter went no contact. Last story. Am I the a-hole for shredding my daughter's coloring book? I have 3 daughters. Alyssa, 18, Tessa, 16, and Jenna, 14. Alyssa and I have a great relationship. We rarely argue. She drives her sisters around. She works almost full-time while in school. The only problem is she can be unreliable. If you ask her to get groceries and be home by 5, she'll call you at 6:30 and ask what you wanted her to do. And she doesn't do housework without being reminded 5 times. She has ADHD though, so that explains it. Jenna loves to argue. She argues with my husband a few times a week. She's a pretty good kid otherwise. She's a straight-A student. She played soccer and is playing softball, and she helps around the house more than both of her sisters combined. Tessa is complicated. When she applies herself, she gets straight A's extremely easy. The problem is, she never does her homework, so she usually has B's and C's. She and I have similar hobbies, and both my husband and I love talking to her when she's in a good mood. We don't fight often, but when we do, it's very dramatic. She's been insisting that she has ADHD or some other problem since she was around 11 because she can't focus. But my husband and I think she's just trying to get shorter assignments and extra time like Alyssa. We got into an argument the other day because she has IBD and gets infusions every 6 weeks. She's very strict about never pushing it back for any reason. After we tried to push it back once because we were going to be in another state, and she got sick for 6 weeks and 3 days. It was 2 years ago and she's healthier now, but she still refuses to push it back. Her next infusion is scheduled for April 1, but we're going to be on a vacation from March 30 to April 4, so I scheduled her infusion for March 8. Her doctor approved it, but she started yelling at me about how last time I pushed her infusion back, she got sick and she isn't going to risk her health for my vacation. It became a very long and drawn-out argument. When I picked her up from school, she put her headphones on so she wouldn't have to talk to me. Then she locked herself in her room. She had borrowed my laptop, so I looked in her backpack to see if she still had it. While I was looking, I saw passes from the school therapist. Tessa knows I don't want her talking to those therapists because those people will find any reason to call CPS. Tess admitted that she'd been seeing the therapist once a week for 2 years. She wouldn't look up from her coloring book, so I took it. And she started crying and asked me to give it back because her therapist gave it to her for when she was having a bad day. I ended up shredding it, and she hasn't left her room except for school and hasn't spoken since. So I wanted to know if I was the a-hole. You're the a-hole. You neglected your kid. You don't want her to seek help. You are aware her seeking help might get you in trouble. You didn't ask her while making a decision on her health. She is overreacting because she had a bad experience. It is very clear. You ruined a book that was probably calming her. You don't think ADHD or whatever is an issue. With this consistency, you might not have a future relationship with your daughters. I can't imagine ever wanting to have a relationship with someone who intentionally destroyed something artistic I was working on. That's like taking a piece of someone's soul and lighting it on fire. My dad called bullet journaling a waste of time when I was monitoring my medication, symptoms, and overall health from 3 different autoimmune disorders. Haven't been able to pick it up over a year later, and I'm 24. I hate this type of parent. First story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my kids what their grandfather did to me? I've been with my husband since high school, and his dad has always made me uncomfortable. Father-in-law adores, borderline worships his wife, and is very cold to everyone. I always thought the family dynamic was a bit weird, but everyone else was nice. Mother-in-law is questionable, but I love his siblings. I got pregnant right after high school and we needed financial help. Around the same time, mother-in-law was diagnosed with late-stage cancer and the prognosis was not great. Father-in-law was devastated. I mean, he pretty much stopped speaking to anyone but her. Mother-in-law has always been vain, and she had a nervous breakdown when she started losing her hair. They're well off, and she had the best wigs money could buy. I guarantee most people didn't know she was wearing wig, but it was very hard on her. I have a long blonde hair, as did she. Apparently my hair was triggering her, so father-in-law told me it had to go. I told him that was unfair. He told me I could cut it or be homeless. I agreed, and he took scissor and cut it off. I wasn't expecting him to just do it like that, and it looked terrible. That was 10 years ago. Mother-in-law did make it, though it was a long road. All of father-in-law's kids view him as a hero because he took such good care of her, but I still hold a lot of resentment. My kids are not allowed around them without me or my husband present. The kids are pretty indifferent to father-in-law, but adore mother-in-law. and recently were questioning why they can't have sleepovers like their cousins do. I was honest about what he did and why I don't trust him. My kids ended up calling mother-in-law and father-in-law and confronting them. Mother-in-law made excuses and made it all about her. My 8-year-old daughter got very upset and said that she doesn't want to see them anymore. Mother-in-law swore at me, kids weren't present, and said that I poisoned them against her. I said that her own husband's actions did that. Mother-in-law isn't talking to me currently and accused me of making fun of her cancer. She always plays the victim when she is cornered, but for the most part, people are on my side. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Oh my god. Fairy tale villains have time traveled to the future. Seriously, an evil mother figure who's jealous of the daughter figure's beauty. An abusive father figure who torments a girl for being beautiful. Traumatic hair cutting against your will. They're from the Middle Ages. You told your kids the truth, and they made their own, right, judgment. As they get older, they'll find it more disgusting. Hair cutting against someone's will is very intimate, damaging, personal violation with all sorts of implications we won't go into here. If they both think it is fair and right, why should they care you told your kids? Haven't they proudly told everyone themselves? How they bravely cut a woman's hair despite her objections because the evil witch was jealous. They're not bragging about it? No, because they know it was wrong. If you don't want people to think you're evil, don't do bad things. I'm so sorry you went through that. Congratulations on having the clarity and resolve to see them for what they are and to protect your kids from them. Don't give your kids any reason to think that's an appropriate way to act when you're jealous. Not an a-hole. Wow, what he did to you was horrible. He took away your autonomy and threatened to make you homeless if you didn't give it up. Honestly, you should go no contact. I would have if I could with just him, but mother-in-law didn't know. Her shock was very real when she heard what he did almost a year later. Info, there's lots of details missing here. So other than the single hair-cutting event, what is the rest of your relationship with them like? Has the inappropriateness of that incident ever been discussed with them since? Most importantly, where is your husband in all this? What was his response to his father cutting your hair? How does he feel about you telling your children this? He never had a great relationship with his dad. Father-in-law was kind of authoritarian, but he feels bad for punishing his mom. She 100% didn't know until almost a year after the fact. She can't act, and that was genuine shock. He wishes the kids could go over, but respects my decision. My relationship with mother-in-law is okay. Father-in-law ignores me for the most part, has always been a jerk to my husband for not working a white-collar job, and is okay with the kids but isn't a kid person in general. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for being upset enough at my wife for how she reacted to a house fire with our baby in the house that I left for a night with our baby? My wife and I have an 8-month-old. Last week, I was coming home from work, and just as I was coming up the driveway, she came running down the driveway barefoot. She saw me and yelled at me to call 911. There was a fire in the kitchen. I asked her where our daughter was because she wasn't with her, and she said she was inside and to call 911 fast. We live somewhere rural and response times are slow. I immediately was scared the house would go up with our daughter inside before the fire department came. I tried to run inside and she tried to stop me, yelling again and again that I couldn't go in. There was a fire. I went in. The way the house is laid out, you have to go through the kitchen to get to the hallway with the nursery. There was a grease fire in the stove in a pan, and the wall above the stove and the curtains nearby was catching. I put out the pan by putting a lid on, and then put out the wall and the curtains with a fire extinguisher. Then I immediately went to the nursery and got our daughter. Going back outside, my wife was gone. I soon found out she went down the road looking for a neighbor whose phone she could use. But at the time, and for a while, I was really upset that her reaction to a fire had been to run out without our baby, and to even try to stop me from going inside before the fire department had come. And that she put her in danger by not trying to put the fire out with a lid or baking tray over the grease fire at first, when it was smaller, or trying to use the fire extinguisher. If I hadn't come home when I did, I don't want to think about what would have happened. The fire department showed up, but the fire was already out, and my wife returned too, driven by a neighbor. I was angry with her for the reasons I said, and she just totally clammed up. I went to stay with my brother and sister-in-law that night, taking our daughter. And my wife was very angry with me over it, saying the next day, how dare I leave her alone after that? She needed someone to drive her to the urgent care after injuring her feet running barefoot. That upset me even more. That was what she was worried about, not what had almost happened when she ran out of the house on fire without our baby. I've been staying at my brother's for about a week now. I don't know what to do, or if I was in the wrong for being so angry. Am I the a-hole for how I reacted to my wife starting an accidental kitchen fire, then running away leaving our baby in the house? Now for the top comments. BR, aka Beyond Reddit. You need counseling, couples and individual, not AITA. Yeah, agreed. This is out of our pay grade. The damage here is immense and multifaceted. Don't let people here put ideas in your head. You are likely to get drama mongering in spite of how well-meaning and sympathetic they might be. You need to bring in the professionals. For real. When my daughter was about 18 months old, she choked on a nickel. My husband yelled for me to come help, stood there with wild eyes in a white-hot panic and asked me 100 times in 20 seconds if he should call 911 while I was doing back blows. I finally said yes, and he grabbed his phone, called 911, and ran out of the house leaving me alone with a choking child. He said his plan was to be out there so the paramedics could find our house, which is fair, it's hard to find. But the reality was he just panicked. He handles crisis professionally, but in the moment, with his own child, he just freaked the hell out. I don't feel like I can judge her or you. No a-holes here. But your wife should definitely learn some basic first aid/home safety. Does your town do a survive alive house? Our town does, and I'm sure they would allow a grown-up who needed some general knowledge and needed to gain a level of confidence in handling small emergencies. A first aid class is probably a good idea too. No a-holes here. Your wife sucks in an emergency. That much is absolutely clear, and that needs to be dealt with for sure. That said, she panicked. I don't think it is fair to hold the decisions she made against her in that state, especially considering she followed the textbook rules that are drilled into children from a young age. Get out, call 911, don't go back in. Remember how many times you heard that back in elementary school from your teachers? On field trips to firehouses, and when the fire department came to your school to do a demonstration. Unfortunately, they don't send out updates for that once we reach adulthood. That said, I completely understand your anger, feelings of betrayal and lost trust in your wife. This is something you both should seek counseling about. The next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for yelling at my husband for what he did at my friend's mother's funeral? I, 34, have a close friend whose mother died after a long struggle with cancer. My friend expected this, but is struggling to cope. I was there for her from the first hour until the funeral. She's my best friend. We grew up together and her mother was like the mother I always wished for. My husband, 37, and I got ready to go to the funeral. He's a self-employed real estate agent after he lost his position at his previous company. Things have been rough for him for the past year, and unfortunately he is still struggling. He's desperate for work. All he has is this one nice suit and his business cards to hand out to everyone he sees. He was married before I met him. My family don't get along with him, and he claims it's because he was married before me. Anyways, we got there. He was talking to few guests, and I just stayed by my friend's side during the service. My sister came to me, berating me, asking why I brought my husband with me. I thought, oh no, please, don't get started on him being married before. Really, my sister brings it up all the time. I told her to drop it. I looked and saw him talking to guests and thought nothing of it. We went to my friend's mother's house where her family gathered. I went to get a bottle of water, then I came back and saw my husband handing my friend his business card. I was shocked. My friend looked upset. Then I pulled my husband aside and asked what he was doing. He said nothing. He had a client looking for a house and thought my friend might want to sell her mom's house, and so he gave her his business card. I covered my face with my hand from shame and embarrassment. We left because I couldn't dare look my friend in the eyes. I yelled at him in the car and asked him who told him she wanted to sell her mother's house, and why he thought it was okay to hand her his business card on her mother's funeral when she was still crying for Christ's sake. He kept saying it was just a question, but I told him that was inappropriate and just awful because pretty much every guest heard what he said to her. He said he was trying to make a living, I told him there were other ways like social media / creating a website or something. I got home and I tried to call my friend to apologize, but she didn't answer my calls. He still thinks he didn't do anything inappropriate and that I'm being harsh on him by yelling. Now for the top comments. Wow. Something tells me that there are reasons to not like your husband that are not related to him previously being married. He needs to read the room. Not an a-hole. His actions were incredibly out of line and callous. Yeah, can't really blame Opie's sister for not liking the husband after reading that. What an absolute heartless thing to do. At least wait until the body is cold before trying to make a buck off of this poor woman's loss. Not an a-hole. I'm a real estate agent, and you have to hand your cards out and network if you want to be successful. A funeral is not the freaking time to network, especially the property of the recently deceased. Not an a-hole. That is just usually inappropriate and insensitive in that setting. You must be mortified. Edited to add, not only is it unbelievably insensitive to your friend, it is so widely understood to be in bad taste that he can probably cross anyone who saw him do it from his list of potential clients as well. Maybe that he'll understand. Your Reddit is right on the money. In the pursuit of one sale, he just tore his reputation with heaven knows how many people who witnessed him being such a crass and predatory bore. It's as though he took that scene from combining obituaries and real estate listings from When Harry Met Sally, literally. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for not trying harder to wake up my husband? My 24 female, husband 24 male, decided on one of his workdays to stay up all night drinking beer and talking one of his friends. I reminded him several times throughout the night that he had work and that he should go to bed, in which he responded that he would be fine. He finally crawled into bed 5 minutes before the alarm was supposed to go off, claiming that he was just going to rest for 5 minutes. The alarm goes off. I shake him, let him know that it went off, and proceeded to get him his clothes and pack his lunch like I always do. I bring him his clothes to find that he has fallen back asleep. I shake him hard enough to wake him up, telling him that it is time to go to work. He mumbles something, and I get up to take the dog out before I had to drive him to work. He can't drive. I come back in to find him still asleep. I shake him again to wake him back up. He wakes up long enough to look at me and then falls back asleep. So starts the repeated process of me shaking him waking up long enough to look at me, and him falling back asleep. I decide that shaking him isn't going to work, so I pull the covers off of him and drag him out of the bed, hoping this will wake him up, as by this time he is going to be late to work. He just mumbles and crawls back in bed. I give up and decide to give him a few minutes before trying again. I repeat the same process. Shake him, try to drag him out of bed, even take his hand to try and pull him up. No luck. This goes on literally for a couple hours. By this time, he is already late to work, which I have told him he was going to be multiple times, and he didn't listen. And it is getting to the point if I don't get him up, then I will also be late to work. I take an ice pack from the freezer and stick it on him. All this does is cause him to pull away and pull the blanket over top of him. I try this multiple more times, along with shaking him and once again trying to pull him out of bed. This also didn't work. I eventually gave up, because he wasn't going to get his butt up, and I was going to be late to work, so I just go and clock in. I work from home. He finally wakes up a couple hours later and demands why I didn't wake him up. I tell him I tried over and over to wake him up and he wouldn't wake up. He gets pissed off and tells me I didn't try hard enough. When I told him I even tried to drag him out of bed, he called me a liar and said that if he loses his job, then it would be my fault. Am I the a-hole for not trying harder to wake him up for work? How much harder could you have tried? I can't believe you tried as hard as you did. But what a huge red flag that he chooses to stay up all night drinking and then blames you when he can't wake up for work. Opie, you shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be questioning if you're the a-hole. Yes, so much. It is not your fault he stayed up late and slept through work. Don't you dare let him make you feel bad. Not the a-hole. Also, I'd recommend you stop getting his clothes and packing his lunch. He's a grown man and can do it himself, along with getting himself up for work. Not the a-hole. Info: I can't be the only one here wondering if this guy does anything for himself. She gets his clothes for the day, makes his lunch, gets him to work. He sounds more like a freaking toddler than a husband. There seems to be an ever-present stream of women posting about their useless children husbands. And that's the end of this video, folks. As always, leave a comment and hit like and subscribe. And if you want more of this content, turn your notification on to get updated on the latest videos. And I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe. Am I the a-hole for not taking the fall for my husband? I was home, just got out of the shower in jammies ready for bed. Husband has been drinking. He's really drunk at this point. I try to stop from leaving, but he left anyway. 4 minutes later, he calls me. I answer. He's yelling, "Open the door, open the door." I swiftly ran to open the front door. He says, "I crashed into a house. Come see." I was speechless and said nothing. I grabbed my slippers and a coat to follow him. There wasn't much light on. The next thing that happens was a very strong person grabs both my arms, put them behind my back, cuffed me, then slammed me down on the trunk of the cop car. I was placed on a back seat for over an hour. Cops kept coming back asking me that same questions. Finally, one cop says, "Your husband is saying you were driving and you crashed into the house. I smell liquor on him and not you. I don't think you were even here. He's dressed to go out, and you're dressed about to go to bed." The end result was my husband got a DUI. So am I the a-hole for not taking the fall? He's still furious with me for not saying it was me. He says it would make more financial sense if I took the fall so we wouldn't have to get hit with that 10K price tag of a DUI. It's making me feel like I'm crazy. Please help. Now for the top comments. Your husband sucks. There is no coming back from this. Sorry. Get out now. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Don't bail him out either. Use the time alone to file for divorce. I didn't bail him out. He got released from the drunk tank, I want to say 72 hours later. I will add that once he got to the jail, he called me. He was so angry. He is yelling with full volume and saying this is my fault. You're a dumb MFer, then hangs up. I cried and cried. He actually had me thinking that was my fault, and I screwed us, and I still questioned it. That's why I posted it here. I'm doing this publicly because I must face this marriage for what it really is, not what I'm hoping for. Don't fall for it. He has nobody to blame but himself. He will probably start love bombing you once you file. Stay strong. WTF, he tried to have you arrested and sent to jail. You were not the a-hole, he is a major one. And stupid plus extremely irresponsible to boot. Being drunk is not an excuse for getting you out of bed, having you come to the scene of his crime, and then pinning it on you until the cops figured out he was full of it. I would not speak to him or be around him, and any future discussion would be through my divorce lawyer. I know it's not that simple though. He needs therapy if he doesn't understand how messed up this is, and how cruel it was to someone he is supposed to love and protect.
He's lucky he didn't unalive someone, and his first instinct was to have you take the blame for his careless and inexcusable behavior. I would say you are underreacting. Does he often control everything and try to force you into situations that are dangerous and uncomfortable? I'm worried for your safety because this is something he did so callously just because he wasn't prepared to take accountability for his actions. If he didn't want to fine for a DUI, he shouldn't have been drinking and driving. It's simple. I'm sorry you now have to deal with the consequences of his mistakes. Not to mention that I'm sure it was a very traumatizing experience on multiple levels. Good luck, Opie. Stay safe. Well, your husband is a worthless POS, and the fact that you have to ask if you're the a-hole in this situation tells me he hasn't been very good to you over the course of your relationship. This is unforgivable. I would dig deep, OP, and find some dignity and self-respect. I've been hoping it will get better. I keep telling myself it will get better, that it must be me who's the problem. Why would he be so cruel to me just because? You're right. I've lost a lot of my dignity and self-respect for myself. He says it will get better once I put more effort into cleaning the house, cooking, making more money, and doing more chores, since he works 16-hour days, not hard labor. Even as I type this, I feel so pathetic and lost. I feel defeated and exhausted and heartbroken. Next story. Am I the a-hole for bursting out laughing when she told me what she brought to our relationship? I, 25 male, have been dating my girlfriend Jen, 24 female, for 9 months. 5 months ago, Jen lost her job when her company went under, and around the same time, she had a falling out with her roommate. She was in urgent need of housing, but in an awkward position with employment status. So she reluctantly asked if she could move into my house. I agreed because she had already spent the night several times, and she moved in under the condition that she would begin looking for work to contribute. Now back on our second date. When I asked Jen if she wanted to be exclusive, she responded by asking me what I would bring to a relationship with her. I answered as pragmatically as possible: a stable income, loyalty, companionship, willingness to compromise, and consistent attention to my appearance and hygiene. I didn't really care much for the question at the time, and so while she seemed mildly satisfied with what I said, I didn't ask her in return. I feel like I've held up my end of the bargain. But after moving in, Jen only really looked for work for about 2 weeks. She now spends the majority of her waking hours on Instagram, TikTok, and Netflix. I've raised the issue with her indirectly before by asking how her job search was going, and she said nobody was hiring, which I find hard to believe. Well, yesterday in the evening, I finally hit my limit. Jen drank a bottle of wine that I was saving for a romantic evening date and spent the rest of her day screwing around on her phone. After work, I sat her down and asked what she thought she brought to the relationship. Jen stared at me for a few seconds, as if I had asked the dumbest question in the history of mankind. Then she erupted, frantically pointing at herself. Me, I'm the prize. From my perspective, this was coming from a woman who had just gotten day drunk of wine, watched Netflix, and ate all my food. I honestly couldn't contain myself, and I burst into laughter. Every time I looked back at her, she would give me this incredulous look while shrugging, which only made me laugh harder. Jen got really angry at me and let out this wailing shriek sort of sound. She stormed off to another room, where I'm 100% sure she just screwed around on her phone more. I haven't talked to her since. I feel like I might have gone too far here. Was I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. I laughed when I read it because I agree with you. If she can ask you that question and you are able to provide a very good answer, she should be able to do the same. Girlfriend or not, you should give her a deadline to find a job, or she needs to move back in with her parents. She needs to not only bring herself to the relationship, but some finances, groceries, and cooking and cleaning skills. What makes her think she can just freeload off of you? Yeah, this, 100%. Not the a-hole, OP. She's an a-hole and a freeloading one with double standards. You helped her out letting her move in way before most relationships consider it. She isn't financially contributing. She's eating your food, drinking wine you're saving. No shame on occasionally getting day drunk, but save it for a Saturday. She isn't looking for a job because she thinks she's got it made. She's a leech. Give her a deadline, say November, to get a job if you're serious and love her. If not, give her a few days to get her things together and go elsewhere. You deserve better. Also, what a weird question. You bring to the relationship what you have. She has nothing. She's a homosexual. 4 months into the relationship and asking to move in? No, ma'am. Either work it out with your roommate or figure something out. OP should have said, can't. My landlord won't allow it. Girl probably agreed to exclusivity the first time she visited his place. I've met way too many of those. They visit my place for the first time, ask me how much is rent on a place like this. I'd foolishly tell them I own it. Next thing you know, they're saying, don't you get lonely here by yourself? I turned the second bedroom into a insert room of choice. Don't you want a roommate? It's not safe for a woman living alone. Boy, bye. You're not even spending the night. Not they all. This relationship sounds doomed. Women with the I'm the prize, now pay for everything attitude is the worst. She's getting used to doing nothing all day while you work. Now, losing a job can definitely be extremely stressful and may require time, but not even looking is just being lazy. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my wife that my life would be better without her? My wife Anne and I have been married for 13 years. I am 43 and she is 46. We do not have children. When we first began dating, nobody could make me happy like Anne. She always seemed to know exactly the right thing to say to me when I was down. But over the past decade or so, she has really started to show her true colors. And a lot of what her ex-husband said to me about her has begun to make more sense. For example, I have a very high-stress job. People bring me problems and I fix those problems. But when I get home, 9 times out of 10, Anne just has more problems to throw onto my plate. She doesn't work, so she's free to do anything she wants to solve said problems during the day. But lately, she has even begun making lists of things that she wants me to do after I work all day. But my biggest issue with Anne is that I can't ever really open up to her about anything. Whenever I talk about something bad that happened to me, she'll either try to one-up me or agree with the person who wronged me. Last Friday, I had a horrible day. There was an enormous problem at work that basically all fell on my shoulders to solve. When I was crossing the street after work, I had a green signal, and a bicycle blew through a red and side-clipped me. The cyclist yelled expletives at me and then rode away. I thought about calling the police because it was technically a hit and run, but there was probably nothing they could do. When I got home, desperate, I talked to Anne about what happened. She listened and then immediately took the cyclist's side. I reiterated that the cyclist ran through a red light, to which she responded that cyclists aren't obligated to stop. When I told her she was wrong and tried to put the issue to rest, she began frantically Googling laws. She found that in our state, they can treat lights like a stop sign. She began triumphantly reading the law to me loudly, word for word, getting louder when I kept trying to tell her that I wasn't interested. At the end of her spiel, she gave me this incredibly arrogant look as if she was right. I just stared at her for a second and said that my life would be better without her. She got incredibly upset, shrieked at me until her voice was hoarse, and then packed a bag and left to stay with her parents. She has texted me all weekend demanding an apology, but I haven't responded. Did I do something unforgivable here? Wait. If the cyclist is supposed to treat it like a stop sign, then shouldn't it stop and yield to oncoming traffic? You, who has a green light? So she's wrong, and still triumphantly claiming victory? Personally, I think you could have elaborated a little on how she sucks the life out of you, but that's me being petty. I hope the best for you. Came here to say this, like she's not even right. Why is she on a high horse? Sounds like problem solved actually. You said what needed saying, and she left. Done and done. Do you need help on first steps for contacting a lawyer or something? Because otherwise, it sounds like you got her out of your house with minimal effort. Sounds like this was just a tiny straw that finally broke the camel's back. Hope he should stop worrying about this situation with the cyclist and look back at all the times he has felt not only unsupported, but have had problems that she dumped in his lap. That she could have dealt with herself while he was working. Think about the totality of the situation, OP, and then contact a lawyer. Not the a-hole. Her ex-husband was a real one for the pre-warning, even though he knew OP would have been in honeymoon phase. What did her ex say about her? He called her a colossal manipulative witch. I nearly hit him when he said that to me. Honestly, if anyone deserves an apology here, it may be him. Never too late to acknowledge that you're an idiot, Toby. 13 years wasted. Now hop to it. You were handed an exit on a silver platter. If you want to double down, reply back to her saying her ex was right about her. Last story. Am I the a-hole for wanting to break up with my husband after he called our autistic son a burden and said he wants to give him up for adoption? I, 30 female, have been married to my husband, 32 male, for 5 years. We've had our share of problems like any couple, but this one's really shaken me to my core. We have a son, 5 male, who was diagnosed with autism about 2 years ago. Of course, it hasn't been easy, but I love him with all my heart. He's sweet, and despite the challenges, I could never imagine life without him. Lately, my husband has been acting different. He's more distant, like he's checked out emotionally. I chalked it up to stress from work, or maybe just that we're both overwhelmed trying to balance everything. But then, I overheard something that I can't unhear. He was talking to a couple of his friends, and they were discussing kids, parenting, etc. One of his friends made some offhand comment about how hard parenting is, and that's when my husband just let loose. He started saying how our son is too much to handle, and that it feels like he's a burden. He even mentioned that sometimes he wishes we could give him up for adoption. Like what? I couldn't believe it. At first I thought maybe he was just frustrated and saying things out of anger or stress, but he kept going. He wasn't just venting. He said he missed the freedom we had before becoming parents, and that he thinks it would be better for everyone if we weren't stuck with his life. I was absolutely crushed. How could he talk about our son like that? I would never give up on him, not for anything. He's not a burden. He's a beautiful boy who just needs more understanding and patience. Hearing my husband say those things about him just shattered me inside. When I confronted him, he brushed it off, saying I was overreacting and that he didn't really mean it, that he was just blowing off steam with his friends. But how can I not take that seriously? He's literally talking about abandoning our son. He didn't apologize. He said he's just overwhelmed and feels like our son's autism is taking over our lives, and he doesn't know how much more he can take. But instead of working through it together, he's talking about running away from the problem. Now I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. I feel like I can't stay with someone who sees our child as burden. But I also feel so torn because we're married, and I thought we'd always have each other's backs, especially when it comes to raising our child. But if he's really feeling this way, how can I trust him to be there for our son and me in the long run? I don't want to break up our family, but I also can't stay with someone who could even think about giving up our child. I love my son more than anything, and I will never allow that. So am I the a-hole for wanting to leave my husband after this? Should I be trying harder to work this out, or is it too far gone? Caregiver burnout is a real thing. Take advantage of babysitters and respite care. Remember, you are more than just a pair of parents, and act that way. With the emotional pressure cooker cooled down, he likely will re-engage with your son. 100% respite care. I'm actually doing a marketing campaign on this right now. I'm fairly shocked at how many people don't know about it. It can be extremely hard to get. If you can't afford it out of pocket, it is very difficult to qualify for aid programs, especially if autism is the only diagnosis. And even then, you need to find someone trustworthy that can be up to the task of caring for your special needs child, not just any old babysitter. Respite is amazing and necessary, but very hard for most caregivers to access reliably. I have one disabled child with serious medical needs, and another that is autistic. True respite is hard to come by. Fact: children are a burden regardless of abilities. Some will require much more attention and sacrifice than others. Children are already a handful, so it's normal your husband is feeling overwhelmed, because by your own admission, your son does need more understanding and patience. Your husband is allowed his feelings, and we can't always control the way we feel about things. Just because he feels a certain way doesn't mean he doesn't love you or your son. Going to therapy is exactly that. Speaking out your mind free of judgment, venting, and finding a way to deal with your emotions in a healthy way. You both need couples therapy. and a reliable childcare provider to help manage the extra responsibilities that come with your son. Instead of judging your husband because he feels a certain way and doesn't mirror your own feelings or way of thinking, try to understand where he's coming from and help each other navigate the situation. No a-holes here. You both just need help.